The CIA spent tens of millions of dollars using abstract paintings as psychological weapons during the Cold War. Instead of bombs, the CIA weaponized abstract expressionist chaos to undermine Soviet influence during the Cold War. Start by examining the global state immediately following 1945. This era was defined by profound geopolitical shifts and widespread reconstruction efforts. While much of Europe and Asia were mostly destroyed by the conflict, the US mainland escaped the physical destruction of World War II. This left American infrastructure intact. This shift caused the global geopolitical order to tilt decisively toward the United States. This change moved beyond military or economic strength. It relied on cultural influence and the use of soft power. The United States had to prove its way of life was more than powerful. It needed intellectual and creative superiority. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union enforced a different cultural standard. The state enforced Socialist Realism as its official, mandatory cultural doctrine between 1932 and 1988. This Soviet style aimed to show reality as it underwent its revolutionary development. Art became required to be clear, heroic, and follow Marxist-Leninist ideology, strictly adhering to the principles of Socialist Realism. The state used this art to enforce clarity, stripping away any personal or abstract meaning. This triggered a direct, escalating cultural conflict between the two competing superpowers. In 1950, anti-communist intellectuals gathered in West Berlin to start a new initiative. This gathering aimed to establish a global movement against Soviet influence. The Congress for Cultural Freedom, or CCF, started right here, marking a significant turning point in the Cold War era. They fought to protect intellectual freedom and oppose Soviet totalitarianism through various cultural and political means. They actively recruited non-communist left intellectuals to fight growing communist influence and win the broader ideological struggle. For years, CCF employees had no idea what the organization was actually doing behind closed doors. In 1966, former CIA agents confirmed the agency funded and helped establish the CCF, an organization designed to promote anti-communist ideas. The operation grew huge. At its peak, the CCF ran programs in 35 countries, expanding its global influence through various cultural initiatives. They did more than host meetings. They published over 20 magazines worldwide, establishing a massive intellectual presence. The agency functioned as America's unofficial Ministry of Culture. They strategically used culture to move the art world center from Europe to the United States. This shift effectively repositioned global influence toward American institutions. Or they pushed modernism to represent Western freedom and individual expression, utilizing new artistic techniques to redefine cultural identity. This move openly attacked the strict, state-mandated realism used throughout the Soviet bloc. The CCF ran large art shows and conferences with leading intellectuals of that period. Top art historians and intellectuals joined these programs, unaware the CIA secretly funded them to promote specific cultural agendas. They routed funding through winding channels to hide who was actually paying the bills. The history. A Bosterhalf Ball in the CCF actually hired a specific museum to curate and organize its most important art shows. Intelligence agencies and cultural institutions shared many direct documented operational links. Certain CIA operatives funding these art shows also participated in much more violent, covert operations throughout the Cold War era. These same powerful figures hired notorious Marseille gangsters to violently break dockworkers' strikes back in 1948. Philosophers debated abstract ideas while the agency handled actual, violent physical conflicts. Meanwhile, Abstract Expressionism began gaining momentum across New York, establishing a new, powerful presence within the global art scene. The show included Jackson Pollock, Willem de Kooning, and Mark Rothko. The style felt chaotic and personal. Lacking a clear narrative, some historians argue spies used these abstract expressionists as tools for propaganda. The CIA used Pollock's messy, unconstrained brushstrokes as a direct metaphor for the values of Western democracy. Soviet propaganda pushed art with clear narratives, while American sponsors favored abstract works that avoided any specific story or meaning. They intentionally labeled traditional, representational art as mere propaganda to discredit it. Thomas Wardell Braden shaped this era of intelligence and media through his influential roles in government and communications. Braden worked for the CIA before he became a famous journalist and wrote 8 is Enough. Onde Haugsarin Heavywald, fall in Tenet at want. His career showed how intelligence work and public influence merged back then. Before the CAA formed, Braden worked for the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, also known as the OSS. The CIA grew directly from the OSS, which ran major operations throughout World War II. Artists have always used media to manipulate how the public views certain social issues. During the 1970s, Church Committee hearings revealed Operation Mockingbird, a secret CIA program. This program used mainstream news to push specific intelligence-driven narratives. Magazines, newspapers, and galleries all shared one goal: controlling how the world saw the news. The CIA used art programs as a specific tool for psychological warfare during the Cold War. Funding the CCF did more than spread American values. It hijacked the actual meaning of intellectual freedom. The AA used the New York avant-garde scene as a weapon, pumping millions into the CCF to promote intellectual freedom and combat Soviet totalitarianism. This strategic shift worked. The art world's center of gravity moved from Paris to New York, leaving a permanent mark on the entire era's cultural landscape. Current exhibitions, like the recent Royal Academy of Arts show in London, still carry the heavy influence of that specific era. The exhibition included 1,600 photo works by 30 abstract expressionists, displaying the movement that acted as a cultural frontline. This sets a dangerous precedent for soft power. If secret funding can manufacture an art movement, we can't trust that modern cultural trends are actually spontaneous or organic anymore, leaving us to question the authenticity of every emerging aesthetic. Artistic expression and state propaganda are now indistinguishable from one another. We have to wonder if what we call culture is just a product of calculated geopolitical strategy, carefully engineered to influence global perception. The Congress for Cultural Freedom drove this covert influence. It worked through a network of intellectuals who appeared to be independent. This setup helped the agency avoid direct scrutiny. It gave the participating artists a way to claim they knew nothing. The agency chose artists carefully. They picked people whose work seemed entirely free from any specific political agenda. The agency promoted works without clear political messages, which directly opposed the rigid aesthetic used throughout the Soviet era. Critics saw the lack of a clear subject as a sign of democratic liberty. They argued Westerners could express even their most chaotic thoughts, finding freedom in the absence of rigid structure. They used ambiguity as a weapon. The sheer difficulty of interpreting the art became their strongest political argument. Money moved through several front groups and foundations. This network prevented critics from tracing the payments directly back to CIA headquarters in Langley. Most famous exhibitions from this era belong to a specific global tour. These massive, highly publicized shows moved through London and Paris to display the rapid scale of American industrial growth. The agency used the New York School's prestige. They used Jackson Pollock's rising fame to make the campaign feel real and grounded in the current art scene. The movement focused on individual impulse and subconscious energy, directly opposing the state-mandated collective narratives found throughout the East. This wasn't just about looks, it was about selling freedom. The agency turned the artist's struggle into a global marketing campaign. This capital infusion fundamentally changed the art market. It built the high-value ecosystem that now drives the modern art trade's global economy. Soviet intellectuals felt a deep psychological shift. They saw a West that appeared both technologically advanced and intellectually disconnected from their existing values. This cultural clash forced a confrontation between two incompatible views. One side prioritized state stability, while the other championed individual volatility. It was a direct fight over human nature. Historians still argue over this operation's impact. The theft forces us to rethink how we define the international art canon today. If modernism actually relied on intelligence-led initiatives, we need to rethink how art history is currently taught. The Congress for Cultural Freedom ran this operation. It hid intelligence officers from the creative community by providing a layer of separation between the two groups. The agency used non-governmental groups to avoid looking like state propaganda. This helped the movement look like a real, homegrown uprising. Using magazines like Partisan Review added weight to the movement. These journals gave the group's ideas a serious tone for the global elite. The agency recruited influential intellectuals to act as unwitting ambassadors. Their endorsements built a deep, organic legitimacy that standard government press releases simply cannot replicate. This operation fundamentally changed the trajectory of mid-century modernism's path. It actively funded a specific, polished aesthetic that closely matched the prevailing Western liberal ideals during that era. Pushing non-representational art pushed figurative styles aside. This change kept the era's visual language subversive and difficult for authorities to control or censor. These campaigns succeeded by exploiting the international exhibition circuit. Each gallery showing functioned as a specific move within a broader geopolitical strategy involving several competing nations. If you enjoyed this look at Cold War history, please like the video. It helps the channel grow. Subscribe to follow our upcoming investigations into how global power structures actually operate behind closed doors. Does the CIA using art bother you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your perspective. We'll see you in the next analysis.